So, for example, majority of our employees are also have been part of the conscription, so they know where we are coming from, what we are trying to achieve, and they already have the basics in place. It's certainly true that majority of the defense companies in Estonia, they are started by veterans or people who have been serving in the defense forces in one way or another.
Welcome to PEP, the Protect Europe podcast, where we interview founders and investors building the technology that protects Europe's values, way of life, and infrastructure. On this week's Protect Europe podcast, I'm joined by Henry and Oliver, two of Wayren's co-founders. Wayren is pioneering battlefield communications. They're from Estonia, they used to work at Microsoft, and they deal with very complex issues around battlefield latency. Hey guys, thank you for joining me on the podcast. This is amazing. I loved our time together in your office in Tallinn, and it was so good to meet you in person. So today, I really want to dive into the future vision for Wayren, right? So I want to understand, if everything goes really well, you execute perfectly, you get all those lucky breaks that every single startup needs, where are you guys in 10 years' time? Where is the company? Where is Wayren? What have you managed to achieve? So I appreciate you're probably planning 2 weeks ahead, but what does it look like when we scan out to 10 years ahead? What does it look like?
So what we see ourselves to be at in 10 years is the fact that communication is more or less key to everything that the defense forces is trying to do in a modern warfare sense. So we also have a background in Estonian defense forces in the cyber command, building a command and control system to revolutionize how the army operates, from planning and executing the tactical operations. And what we found out that the main challenge was reliable communication. So you can have the most fancy and expensive command and control systems, AI-based analytic systems to aggregate the information from the battlefield, etc. But if you don't have reliable communication, then that's not going to give you the effect that you're looking for. That's why we decided to start Wayren to really dive into providing reliable last mile communications, even when the networks themselves are unreliable, if there's infrastructure failures, bad, difficult terrain, jamming, etc. And where we see ourselves is we would like to be more or less industry standard as part of a wide selection of command and control systems, of course, sensor to shooter networks, part of different vehicle platforms, sensor platforms, to really help build like a reliable communication backbone for digitizing the armed forces. And because we are a dual-use company, of course, we also envision ourselves to have a strong foothold in the commercial market. So remote industrial operations, police, search and rescue, civil protection in general.
Okay, so there's not much to add. Basically, you want to be the communications background for effectively the military, police, armed services, all governments across Europe, making billions in revenue?
Of course.
No, but jokes aside, that is exactly the kind of the challenge. So, okay, there was a lot to unpack in there in terms of the future vision and a few hints of your past. But, you know, your past is super interesting. You know, you're both young guys. You've come out of the Estonian Defence Force and you have an active role in that force. And also you basically did the kind of the cybersecurity stuff. Is that where you two met?
Yes, so I was part of the cyber conscription in Estonia. Our third co-founder, Tarmo, was the commanding officer in that program. Oliver was conscript, I think, 2 years before, but he was very active and came back to train and help us, and that's how we met.
Okay, and does that happen a lot in Estonia that effectively people are meeting? Because that was the big thing that the Israeli Defense Force put forward is startups were formed in the military. You all went in, national conscription, everybody went in, 16, 18-year-olds. You all went in from different parts of the country. And, cliches aside, there was a battle-tested relationship because effectively you had to form these teams quickly, yeah, and build their capability. Is that how it happens in Estonia?
Yes, and also having the domain experience is very important when building defense products because let's say the challenges are so different from what you are seeing in the civilian sector. So the mission critical reliability aspects and the electronic warfare and security, let's say threats, they are so much bigger and more challenging. So having people who have seen this and have worked on systems like that before and understand that without us having to train them from scratch is also hugely important. So, for example, majority of our employees are also have been part of the conscription, so they know where we are coming from, what we are trying to achieve, and they already have the basics in place regarding funding companies and bringing innovative teams together. It's certainly true that majority of the defense companies in Estonia, they are started by veterans or people who have been serving in the defense forces in one way or another.
Okay, but just on that one, so that you've got people who've got the defense capability, understand the mindset, etc. What about the private tech experience? Like, Estonia has small country, 1.6 million, but it punches way above its weight in terms of the private tech scene. Oliver, where did you work beforehand? I know that you had some experience in tech firms.
I started my career as a hobby when I was in sixth grade. Then I went to Estonian e-store working at On24, which is like eBay for in Estonia and Finland for furniture, and after that Microsoft.
Oh, no one's heard of Microsoft. You're going to have to explain. No. Okay, and what did you do at Microsoft? And was that helpful in terms of understanding the kind of bigger tech landscape and then the capability from the military side? I'm just curious.
Microsoft was most useful for how to build scalable and reliable applications, and how security was and privacy was a big thing there to make sure that everything you do is secure, even from quite difficult attacks like supply chain attacks, where your code might be clean, but the compiler that compiles or environment that runs it is not. So these things are important here as well.
No, absolutely. And what about the team's backgrounds? Where have people worked before they joined Wayren?
All over the place. So that's the good part about our conscription, because everybody is conscripted. That means people who are lawyers, doctors, who are engineers, hardware, software, anything. We are all one big pot of mixed stew, and so that we meet a lot of different backgrounds.
Okay, and that's great. So then the question being is, we talked about the future vision. We talked a little bit about your backgrounds. Now, every startup founder or every founding team has to do what are we doing tomorrow? What do we need to do today? So what does today look like for you, right? What do you actually need to execute? You're going into September, holidays over, sadly. What does September look like for you?
So Oliver can give his point of view, but we really want to scale our sales. So we already have some pilot projects that we have delivered, and we want to go into, let's say, more or less a scalable product phase, which means that we're really trying to hammer down production readiness. We have like a software solution in majority part, but we do have a small hardware component which allows our software which runs on the end user device to interface with different communication equipment easier. So we are trying to really drive to having our hardware products in series production. We are trying really to get the software product ease of use as high as possible, because the feedback we are that is coming back from our pilot projects is that it needs to be really, really simple and fast and easy to use, and also reliability. So we're trying to do as much testing as possible that the app doesn't crash, that there aren't any bugs. So we are trying to be battle proven and combat ready, I should say, in other ways. And
look, I think just on that one, and I really want to dig into exactly what the system does, because obviously I've got the privilege of spending some time with you guys. But just before we get to that, one of the big challenges just on that is managing the software, managing the hardware, right? Now, my understanding is you're doing a lot of software in-house, but you've also found a partner for the hardware. Explain how that relationship works, because that's a difficult one for an early stage company building this kind of holistic capability in defense to manage.
So our hardware is designed by us. It's under our own control, and to make it work is our responsibility. But our manufacturing is outsourced to another company, Estonia.
Yep, they have like capabilities to series manufacture the hub. We currently have like a small lab for prototype manufacturing.
Okay, and the obvious one is, how did you meet/select this company? Did you meet them in a bar, karaoke night, Estonia Defense Tech, or was there something a bit more to it?
Actually, Estonian military association members actually talk a lot with each other, and we got the recommendation that they do their job well.
Yeah, we did open source intelligence, so we talked with some other companies who have been outsourcing manufacturing. Majority of companies are outsourcing for the scale, let's say, scale factor. So this company was coming very highly recommended for their professionalism and very high quality, because not everybody can handle the work without introducing a lot of defects during manufacturing.
And I think, Oliver, you made a really good point there. Like, controlling the risk is designing it yourself, but then working with an experienced partner who can then bring that to life with appropriate costs of goods, right? You know, without the bill of materials going through the roof, etc. Okay, that's great. Now, let's go back. What is the problem that you guys solve? We said that capability, the communication is a problem. Let's spell out the problem. The battlefield is messy and shit fails. Let's go into that.
Yep. So the problem boils down to the fact that in defense industry and also in mission critical civilian industries, the speed and accuracy of decision making is key for success, and that just cannot happen when your communication lines are always breaking down, which inevitably happens in the contested battle space or in very remote industrial areas. So what the problem boils down to is that the networks are unreliable, or the, let's say, traditional communication infrastructure is not always available. So we need to have something that is more decentralized and more reliable, and that's what we provide. We provide a software-based solution for deploying extremely reliable ad hoc communication networks with a variety of technologies such as radios, internet, satellite, Bluetooth, etc.
Okay, so, but I want you to be a little bit more detailed. When we say unreliable, that's because, hey, we're not in a 5-star hotel with Wi-Fi. It's because we're in these isolated rural areas. It's also because the enemy isn't necessarily particularly happy for us to communicate particularly well amongst ourselves. But what's the scale of the problem? So, let's look at Ukraine today. That is sadly the battlefield of Europe. What are the problems that they're facing?
So we are really used to having a 4G, 5G mast somewhere and landlines everywhere, so you can just connect your home Wi-Fi and so on. Problems there you can't choose, and problems on the battlefield. So if the mast is going down, you might not have a landline in the middle of the field, so you need to use some kind of radio or put the landline there yourself, and then if you have to move, then you have to redo it. So what happens on the battlefield is everything moves all the time. Your units move, your logistics move, and you will have frequent downtimes all the time. So you might have network for 10 minutes and then lose the network for half an hour. What else? People might go into the trenches and the radio doesn't really go through land. You need line of sight. You might lose the connection there. Since you don't have long masts everywhere, your communication ranges are much shorter because, as I said, line of sight is the key. Some radios can do better than others, but you need more radios, and those radios normally have extremely high packet losses and downtimes between them. So we are solving these problems with smarter software and protocols to make sure that even with those downtimes and communication problems, we can reliably get all the information where it needs to be.
And I think you mentioned packet loss. Just explain packet loss in this context, because that seems to be the way of measuring effectively communication in this space. And then talk about some of the percentages. You say that most systems collapse at a certain packet loss rate. You can sustain higher. That's probably an architecture type approach. So just explain packet loss.
Well, if we put it into terms how we speak right now, imagine normally in civilian networks, packet loss is normally less than 1%. That means every 100 words we speak to each other, one gets lost. We will understand each other. And if I lost one word, then I can ask, hey, what was the last word you were telling me? I lost that. If you have packet losses 70% or over, which is normal on the battlefield, you will hear only every third word.
Ouch.
Would we understand each other? Maybe the theme, what we're talking about, maybe, but we wouldn't be able to convey meaningful information. And most of our conversation would be, please repeat that word. Please repeat that word. And even that me asking for you to repeat it might get lost.
Yeah, and this feels like talking to an elderly relative. Previously,
Exactly.
It used to be on Skype. Obviously not anymore, but effectively that kind of like, repeat, what did you say again? I got the gist, but I haven't got much more.
And
Not
at one
particularly
point,
helpful for critical communications, life and death decisions, calling in air support, etc. Doesn't sound like a good situation.
And even conveying one sentence might get extremely long. So we might take minutes to just convey one sentence completely. And this can be solved with extremely nice protocols and a little bit of math, but normally civilian protocols don't assume that high packet losses.
Okay, so just explain the protocols that we use in everyday life and the protocols that you've basically had to invent for this 70% loss situation, which is kind of the norm, yeah, rather than a bad day.
So the difference is there is always give and take with protocols. If you want high speed, low latency, that means information comes to you fast, your web page loads fast, and so on. You will have to use more data. So this is fine, but your packet loss tolerance is lower. The moment packet loss gets high, then you use extreme amounts of data, which will be more than your network is capable of handling. So normally, the TCP protocol, transmission control protocol that we use to look at our web pages, have this call and so on, usually can tolerate up to 35% of packet loss. After that, it's the connection completely drops.
So the thing is about efficiency.
But with efficiency, we actually sacrifice a bit of latency. Basically, currently we can't send video streaming over this protocol, but for data, we might deliver the message a bit later, or might be received later, but at least it is efficient. It doesn't kill your bandwidth or your data rate that you can achieve in that radio network. And that's the main point of it.
Yeah, and that again when we met, I think what struck me was how that was very similar to the early days of kind of, ironically, ride hailing in London. Yeah, where we had a taxi company that was at the time one of the biggest taxi companies in Europe. All the corporate clients were all the Barclays banks and the Clifford Chance law firms. And when their CEO called for a ride hailing car, it was there in screeching to a halt, tires warm. And when Joe Public called, they still got a car within 6 to 8 minutes, but they never got it within 60 seconds because the system prioritized the bill payer, and the bill payer was the CEO, CFO of these big corporate firms. And so the system basically did a triage. Yeah, it was like most important message went through, and you kind of do something similar to that, which is the most important message is you're routing as a priority. And then the stuff that effectively on a normal network in a battlefield would never get through anyway, you're letting it go through a little bit later. How do you manage that?
Prioritization is important part of the system because imagine you have been down for 10 minutes or maybe a day. When you come back online, you need to get the high priority first. So we have a great part of the protocol and all algorithms checking high priority stuff first, sending those. And if high priority is done, then we move to low priority stuff.
So what happens is that all the users in the network are generating and saving the data in their device locally, creating like a queue of messages need to be sent out. And when the network is re-established or connected, then they start to work through the queue. But then the prioritization kicks in. So if you have like some mission critical information like indirect fire support order, which needs to happen as fast as possible, so you're designating like an enemy armored vehicle that you need to destroy, that gets like prioritized immediately when the network restores as first priority. And then maybe your own location and some nice to have reporting telemetry gets only started when those have been completed already in the queue.
Okay, that makes sense. And just so I'm clear, because a lot of this is very clever protocols, software algorithms, etc. I'm presuming it's important because you're spending a lot of time on it. How important is the hardware to go with these software and AI improvements? And what does that really unlock for you? Because obviously introducing hardware always makes it harder, not just in the production of it, but in that fact that it's got to work in battlefield conditions, right? This can't just sit in a nice office and we dust it occasionally. What role does the hardware play, your hub and spoke models?
Well, when we wanted to be software only company, and this didn't work out for us. When we first went to the field with our software, we connected the military radios with a Ethernet cable to the phone with Ethernet dongle, USB to the Ethernet dongle, and one of two of them broke already in the first exercise. So soldiers don't have their phones on the table nicely and neatly, so they crawl around with them and so on, and the cables break. So what we wanted to get is something that makes different peripherals, like their laser rangefinders, designators, radios, wireless to your phone. Their radio can be in a backpack or just somewhere on the trench line or safely, and your phone is not connected to anything. So what it is really is a wireless dongle for your phone that make to connect to radios and peripherals.
So the thing is about hardware is that in the end we are delivering a capability to the customer. So the software is one part of the capability, maybe let's say technically the most important part, at least in our case. But the customer is looking at the package as a whole. If it is not practical to use, it's too expensive or too much of a hassle to implement it, they are not going to use it. So we really need to have the hardware components, some of them which we make in-house, like the hub, some of them which we source from our partners, like different radios that we are integrating into our platform. We really need to package it as a whole in a way that it makes sense and is comfortable to use and works like extremely well as a whole capability to the customer. And then they will start adopting it in a really large scale and really be happy with it, because also our name is attached to it, so they associate the whole experience with us in the end.
Look, I think you absolutely nailed it. Look, it's easier to be a software company, iterate, ship, iterate, ship, iterate, ship. But we're looking at a problem that software on its own can't solve. And in this case, whether it's governments or military or mining establishments operating in rural areas, they're buying a capability. Okay, so let's then move on. At the moment, you've run some pilots with obviously the Estonian Defense League, Ukrainian, etc. What's been the feedback? Right, apart from stuff broke, what sort of feedback did you get from the troops actually on the ground using this, either in exercise or in real life?
I think the HIMARS example is good example, which we did just a month ago. So there was Estonia received their first HIMARS, Estonian Defence Forces, and there was a live fire exercise in Saaremaa. We also deployed our communication system for general command and control, so tracking where the assets are, providing some basic telemetry and messaging between them. And what the feedback was that this was the most reliable and comfortable system they had during the exercise, and they were very happy with it. Of course, there is one, let's say, challenge or downside with the system, because we are putting a decentralized communication system in the hands of all the users and assets. It also brings a little bit extra complexity, because you need to make sure you're configured it correctly, that your radios are hooked up, the equipment is working well, etc. The key here is the ease of use, which we always hear about. And actually, in this exercise, it was a positive, because our solution is with minimum setup. Other competing solutions, they have a need for engineers to come and configure everything for a week or so. But with our solution, we just gave them the tablets, they turned it on, and it started to work. And this is also one of the beauty of the protocol that we have, is the fact that it's a very, very low configuration complexity. But we're trying to make it even better going forward.
And when you're actually talking to the buyer, does the fact that you're kind of selling decentralized and they're like going, no, but we're military, we're command and control, there's a hierarchy here, does that kind of point land? Because decentralized really shouts resilience, this bit breaks, but the whole thing works. How does that bit convey in kind of sales meetings?
Well, current military networks are in a way decentralized as well.
Okay.
So when we're talking about those green military radios, these are called Monet radios. And in the name is basically these are ad hoc radios. So your unit who uses these radios can operate standalone.
So the thing is that we still allow in our network to provide filtering, encryption keys to join the network groups, etc. So there are a lot of control mechanisms to make sure that you still have control of who is getting what and where, and this is how we manage it. So for example, if you're a brigade HQ, you put the filters that from your brigade network to, let's say, the company network, only certain information is shared, which is need to know. And that's how we manage it. To join that network, you need specific encryption keys that you provide, and you can rotate and make sure that if something gets lost or something happens, that you can change it, and then the access is lost. I think so
nothing
far
changes.
Nothing changes in a sense that it actually gives them more control to what they have right now.
Okay.
And
so it wasn't as big a point as I was imagining. And then one of the biggest challenges is governments are slow, militaries can be slow. How do you get that adoption curve? Right? There's definitely, it just works. Soldier command on the ground, successful exercises. And then how, Europe is world-class at regulation, but how can we be world-class at procurement? How can we make it easier to buy your stuff?
I think US has very good systems in place for this purpose, which we should be looking what they're doing and how they're doing things.
So this
So
is
they
like the
have
Speed Act, which basically
exactly.
makes it easier to efficiently and effectively buy new technologies and capabilities.
And they are very actively looking to work with small companies and innovative companies and procuring things separately and providing, let's say, alternative avenues from the traditional procurement. So the traditional procurement system is actually not bad for buying fighter jets and tanks and whatnot, some extremely expensive, extremely complex platforms that it does take tens of years to develop and build and maintain. But there needs to be like an alternative path for innovative technologies which are very flexible and change quite quickly. And I think this type of mindset is already taking root, but we of course need to do more and to do
And we met on the
prepare.
back of you guys raising 7.98 million-ish of strategic capital, right? And I gave you my normal speech that I've given to 1,000 founders, which is strategic capital never brings the strategic value. It's just capital, right? And I was hoping and praying that you would be the one exception, 1,000 that I've given that speech to, who got the strategic value. So let's unpack that. Who is your strategic investor? And what are they going to do to unlock that value for you and for themselves? Because it's a two-way street.
So the strategic investment, why it's interesting for us is having access to the sales channels and having access to the ecosystem of products. So we are more and more understanding the importance of capabilities so that we don't only provide you a protocol which makes communication better, but we provide you a communication capability or decision-making capability even, or some sort of sensor-to-shooter network, which our technology is part of. So the first thing that we really are excited about is the fact that our strategic investor EFA Group, based from Greece, they're like a defense industry prime. They have a very big portfolio of products from sensors to command and control systems to drones, etc., which we can very tightly integrate and package into a whole ecosystem to provide more complete solutions to the customer. And this goes both ways. So we can provide it to our customers and they can provide to their customers. So it goes both ways. And
network is useless if you don't have any information to run on it. So we need applications and ecosystem with it.
yep, so it unlocks for us an ecosystem to work with and package our products into, which is very interesting. And second thing is the sales channels. So as a small team, we have always limited resources to go after like a certain amount of opportunities at the same time and certain regions. With the EFA Group, they have offices all around the world and they are helping to approach customers not only in Europe but also in US, Asia, Latin America, Middle East, etc. So we are thinking about it as a force multiplier.
Oh, look, and I really, as I said when we first met, I really hope that you nail it and EFA nail it too. And again, I think a good thing that you've done is you're still doing sales yourself. And I think
Exactly.
this is one of the challenges. If you basically, the strategic investor goes, hey, we got a sales team. These guys know everything. They're going to sell all the way around the world. Don't worry your sweet head. You do algorithms, hardware, software, and give up your sales capacity. That's where a lot of companies struggle because effectively you don't build that muscle yourself and you're utterly reliant on the strategic investor or partner to deliver the sales. And if they deliver, double thumbs up. And if they don't deliver, oops.
I think it's the right point you're hitting, and our strategy is to use it as a like a force multiplier. So it doesn't change our mindset about internal sales, and we're actually investing very heavily. So we recently recruited a very experienced foreign military sales person based from US as our sales director to really help to build and
Okay,
grow
so
our.
let's give them a shout out. Who have you brought in? If it's in public.
So this is Anna Smar. She was working with the US government in foreign military sales, working on selling Apaches, HIMARS, rocket defense systems. into Europe and in other regions of the world. So she has like 20 years of foreign military sales experience.
Which is great. So she liked you, you liked her. Did she say why she wanted to join you guys? Why you guys? That clearly that CV talks that she could have gone into 20 different companies.
So she had a lot of options on the table, so we really had to pull out the red carpet. But she liked us because she worked with us as she was selling the HIMARS system for Estonia. She was impressed with us, what we are doing. She thought that our product is very unique on the market. She's getting a lot of good feedback, and also she likes Estonia in general, which was helpful. So
Oh,
she
come on. I'll
wanted
go on. The last point, who doesn't like Estonia? Right. Oh, Estonia is one of the, if people haven't visited, it's one of the best countries out there. You've got the beaches in Pärnu, you've got Tallinn's medieval city, you've got, it's basically a mini Silicon Valley. You walk around and you basically meet tech people all the time, but without the kind of Patagonia vest. So it's all good. Okay. So coming towards the end, one important question for you is, who do you admire in this space? Right, you're building a very impressive defense protecting Europe company, serving directly capability to militaries. But you scan the horizon, you know the landscape. Which founders or investors have really impressed you, who are building in this space? Who can we give a shout out to?
So personally, I really admire our Ukrainian founders. For example, Misha from Chimera. So what is the main thing that we like is the speed and adaptability that they are doing. So they are saying to us that they are doing new revisions every second week or so, or new, let's say, design changes or changes in their strategy. And I think it's just the right mindset, especially in the industry we are at, where innovation is key, and it doesn't make sense to develop something for 5 years and then realize when you go first time to the exercise that actually it's not what is needed or the situation already changed. Of course, some exercises don't go well because you're doing a lot of changes, a lot of trying out new things. But I think this is the right approach too, and to really find the solutions to protect us and NATO in general.
Oh, look, I think there's a huge shout out to the Ukrainian founders at the moment. Obviously dealing with very difficult circumstances, but their speed of iteration is insane. And, I think ultimately at the moment, as we all know on the battlefield, it's Russia innovating, Ukraine innovating, Russia innovating, Ukraine innovating. And it's a race of innovation at this particular point with a lot of hybrid military stuff. Oliver, anyone else that you think deserves a special shout out?
I think people at Gropiva and Delta are doing an amazing job because right now they are only widely used C2 system in combat. I don't know all the names, but we hear a lot of good things about them.
Okay, no, that's good. Good to hear. So look, guys, a huge thank you for your time. I think that I would certainly encourage anybody to have a closer look at your company when you go for future fundraising rounds, because I think that there's an awful lot to like. You're clear on what you're looking for, the capability that you're building, the fact that it is this very strong hardware protocol AI software mix, that this is a real problem on the battlefield. Like, this is not just superficial, this is catastrophic if it goes wrong. And that you've got this, I saw you guys in operation in the office, you've got this high pace mindset, which is going really, really, really well. So absolute best of luck. You're doing a great job, and I look forward to seeing you in Tallinn very soon.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. You've been brilliant. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. To make sure you catch us again, please follow us on your favorite podcasting platform.